in your system, I guess. But if anyone is still pending, just go with that. So everyone should be able to open this data loader in your machine. Okay. So first of all, we'll go with these data migration functionalities. First, we'll go through the data migration functionalities. Then after, we can discuss about these data loader activities. So in our Salesforce, we are having different kind of projects like admin development and as well as data migration also. Okay, so we are having admin, and then next we are having development. So and then data migration. So in these we are having like health cloud, revenue cloud, different modules is there. But if you go with any of the data migration project, okay, if you go with any of the data migration project, so you are going to work purely for data migration activities only. Okay, so in the case of like admin and development, you need to implement something, or like you need to do something activities. But in the case of like data loader, it's a completely different world. Okay, it's a completely different project. Whatever the like Apex classes, Apex triggers, and then your workflows, process builders, all those things you need not worry. So you just need to like work with only data migration activities. So these data migration lessons, first we'll discuss the concepts called data migration and then metadata migration. So two things we need to consider. So one is data migration, and then another one is metadata migration. Metadata migration. So do anyone know about metadata? What is metadata in Salesforce?
Data about it.
There is a bookish word. So what is
Whatever we have in setup, we can search from setup. That comes under metadata only.
Mhm.
Metadata describes structure of objects and also their fields, page layouts.
The data which can be used for the reference purpose.
Mhm. Anything else?
Data that is configured to be used in such a way.
Mhm. Okay. So metadata means, as you mentioned, in the case of if you would like to answer like as a bookish, so we are going to say like data about data. Okay, so data about data in the sense, if you create one profile in our Salesforce. So now what we are trying to do, we are trying to create one profile in our Salesforce, or like you created one of the workflow in our Salesforce, or you created one of the process builder or flow or like validation rule or assignment rule, or so any of the automation functionalities are like a physical activities. So whatever the functionalities you have created in Salesforce, so all those are we called as a metadata. Okay, so if you create one profile in backend, then by default metadata it is going to create for that profile. Okay, so for example, profile is a data, and data about data. So data about data. So whatever the profile you have created, so regarding that profile in backend, it is going to create one file for that. Okay, the file we called as a metadata for each and every configure activity. So you are going to get one meta XML file. The corresponding meta XML file we called as a metadata. So that we called as data about data. If you create a dashboard, if you create a report, or if you create an email alert, or flow, process builder, workflow, email alert, email template, and then assignment rules. So we are having like validation rules, and then objects, fields, profile, permission set, roles, everything. If you create anything in Salesforce with our setup, then you are going to create a backend meta XML file, backend meta XML file. So that is in a different format. That is in different format. So why we need to use that meta XML in the sense, if you would like to migrate, your profile from one org to the another org, so what you are going to do, so if you are implementing in a sandbox, you need to deploy changes from a sandbox to the another sandbox, or like changes from a sandbox to the production. So if you would like to move, how you are going to move in the sense, whatever the metadata file, it is going to move. Okay, whatever the metadata you have created, so simply they are going to migrate only metadata. They are going to migrate only metadata. So here we are having a terminology called data migration. So within this data migration, again two things is there. One is metadata migration, and then data migration. Metadata migration and then data migration. So metadata migration, when it occurs in the sense, for example, already you are using one of the Salesforce org. Okay, SF org1, SF org1, you are using SF org1. So you may be like exceed the limit, or like you would like to separate your functionalities. You would like to separate your org functionalities. Then what you are going to do? You are going to purchase one more Salesforce R2, one more Salesforce R2, and then you need to migrate a few of the automations and then a few of the functionalities from Salesforce Arc1 to the Salesforce Arc2. So if you would like to migrate Salesforce Arc1 to Salesforce Arc2, then what you are going to do in the sense, so whatever the metadata, first we need to migrate it. Whatever the metadata, first we need to migrate it. Then after we go for data migration. Then after we go for data migration. So in these data migration, as I mentioned, it is fall under two categories. One is metadata migration, and then second one is data migration. Okay, so data migration, I will explain like what is data. So already we are discussing about metadata, right? So whenever data migration project is you need to work, okay, so at that time first you need to complete a metadata migration. Okay, or first we need to check with the business, can we perform metadata migration or not. Okay, if they already complete metadata migration, then you can go for data migration. So the first step what you need to do here is metadata migration. Metadata migration. So what is this metadata in the sense? So whatever the Salesforce created things like profiles, roles, permission sets, and then validation rules, workflows, public groups, queues, and then we are having like a workflow, then email alerts, email templates, so letterheads, and then we are having like field updates, so task creation, outbound message, and then we are having these process builder. Within the process builder, what are the actions available? All the actions, and then flows. Within the flows, what are the actions available? All the actions, and then if you go with the reports and dashboards, so all these are metadata. All these are metadata. So whatever the record types also fall under metadata only. Page layout also metadata only. So if you create a record is basically data. So for example, I am creating one record in my account object. I am creating one record in my contact object. I am creating one record in a student object. I am creating one record in like other objects. So whatever the objects we are having, so simply I am going to create records in those objects. I am going to create records in those objects. So whatever the records you have created, these records we called as data. Whatever the records you have created, these records you called as these records we called as data. And in the case of whatever the backend functionalities what we have created, that we called as metadata. So just now we discussed it, right? So from profile to these reports and dashboards, all these concepts what we discussed so far, all these fall under metadata only. So record in sense, what are the records we have created? What are the records we have created within the object? This we called as data. This we called as data. So data, metadata is two different things. Data, metadata is two different things. We need to like take care about these terminology. So if they're asking about like data migration, we need to like verify first metadata is deployment is complete or not. Metadata migration is complete or not. So why? Because if you would like to create records, first you need to first you need to complete the metadata migration. So why you need to complete metadata migration in the sense, so if you would like to create record in a student object, if student object is available, then only you are going to create the records. If student object is not available, then you cannot create records. So now you have an activity. You have an activity. The activities is basically you need to migrate a student object data. You need to migrate student records. So you have a requirement. You need to migrate student records. Then what we feel. So if you're like directly moving the data, if you're directly moving the data, so then what happened, right? First it need to verify whether student object is available in our target org or not. Target org or not. If student object is available, sorry, if student object is available, then only we are able to migrate the data. So if student object is not available, then we cannot store the data in any of the object. So here, if you got this kind of requirement, then what you need to, first you need to verify whether metadata is complete or not. If metadata is completed, then you can start migrating data here. Okay, so now if you got this requirement, right, so then first you need to like verify so whether student object is available or not. So if student object is available, then you can start migration. So if student object is not available, then you need to do metadata migration. So these metadata migration, you can like do it in multiple ways. So within the org in the sense, so we are having one Salesforce org. Within our Salesforce org, we are having like a sandboxes is there. We are having sandbox is there. So already we discussed about the sandbox in our first class. So we are having like a sandbox is there. So within the sandbox, we are having like a full copy, and then a partial copy, and then we are having a developer pro. So then after we are having developer sandbox. We are having total of four sandboxes available here. Four types of sandboxes available here. So if you would like to migrate data between a same org in a sense. So these entire process we called as except arg2, whatever the sandboxes and then Salesforce arg1 production, all these are we called as one org. All these we called as one org. So if you would like to migrate data, so between a same org, from one sandbox to the another sandbox, from like a one sandbox to the production, or production to the sandbox. So if you would like to migrate your org, then we can go with the concept called change set. We can go with the concept called change set. So with the help of change set, we are able to like deploy the corresponding changes. So now coming to SFR2, in these SFR2 as well, they are having their own sandboxes. So those are like a full copy, partial copy, developer pro, and then a developer sandbox. So these sandboxes available in our Salesforce R2. These sandboxes available in our Salesforce R2 as well. So whatever the full copy and then a partial copy, full copy. So then after partial copy, and then we are having like a developer pro. So then after we are having like a developer. So for second org also we have like these sandboxes available. So if you would like to specify org in a sense, so org is a combination of one production and then all sandboxes. So these we called as a single org. If you would like to migrate within these org itself, then you can go with change it. But now I would like to migrate SF arg1 to the SF arg2, SF arg1 to the SF arg2 with the help of change set. It is not possible. With the help of change set, it is not possible. So what we can do, we can use VS Code. We can use VS Code, or we can use Eclipse, or we can use Ant migration tool, or we can use it Auto Rabbit, Jenkins. So we are having like a few other. So the another one is version control Git. So all these things are available. available. So depending upon company to company, it is vary. So they are going to use different tools for the migration. Okay, so with the help of all these things, with the help of all these things, they are going to migrate metadata. They are going to migrate metadata. And one more thing. So with the help of like a chainset or like a VS Code or Eclipse or Ant, AutoRabbit, Jenkins, Git. So with the help of this one, we cannot migrate data. We cannot migrate data. So someone maybe in our interview, they are going to ask you this question. So how can we migrate account records with the help of chainset? Account records with the help of chainset. Okay, so they are going to ask you question like this. So how can we migrate account records or contact records or student object record with the help of chainset? Then what we need to say? So chainset can migrate metadata, but it cannot migrate data. But it cannot migrate data. Okay, so whatever the tools we have specified here, right, all these tools are able to migrate metadata only, but it never migrate data here. It never migrate data here. Okay, so it's like a very basic question. Generally, if they would like to verify whether you are having like a real-time knowledge or not, at the time they are going to ask you such type of questions. Okay, so the question is basically, if I would like to migrate data from like a one arc to the another arc, then we can use like different tools. Metadata, I can go with these VS Code and then Eclipse and AutoRabbit, Jenkins, Git, all these things. So we are having few other tools as well. So depending upon your business logic and then your like budget, you can use different tools. In the case of like within the arc itself, you can like migrate from one developer sandbox to the another developer sandbox, or developer to the developer pro, or developer to the partial copy, full copy. So or like to the production. If you would like to migrate, then we call as you can call as a change set. You can use this concept called change set as well. Okay, but in the case of like two different tasks, change set won't work. You need to use your own tool. So the tool either you can go with quick deploy or like VS Code or Eclipse or Ant, AutoRabbit, so Jenkins, Git. So they are having multiple things available. They can use any one of these tool and then they can deploy metadata. So now coming to the data migration. So in the case of like data migration, what they are going to do. So I have used like for the data migration. So for the data migration, so far I have used like a data loader and another tool called talent. So these two tools I have used for data migration. So if they are asking like about can we migrate a account object with the help of data loader, then simply what we can say, no, it is not possible. So data migration is different and then metadata migration is different. So data migration sense records what we have created within our objects. Metadata in the sense what is like we have created. So with the help of like setup menu, so those concepts we called as a metadata. So for metadata migration, so these are the tools available, and within the arc they can use change set. But in the case of like these meta in the case of like these data migration, we can use data loader, and then we are having like another tool called import wizard. It is our Salesforce tool. These two tools are like Salesforce tools, import wizard and then data loader. So these two tools are available for the data migration from Salesforce. And if you would like to go with external tools, then we can go for like talent. So these are the tools we can use for data migration. So not only these tools, we are having some external tools also available, but depending upon budget and then the person knowledge, based on that, they are going to choose different tools here. Okay, so coming to the coming to the like these data migration. So as I mentioned, if you would like to go with data migration, first you need to complete a metadata migration. So if you're done with metadata migration, then you can go with these data migration. You can start doing a data load in your arc. Okay, so now if you would like to go with these metadata migration, so what the necessity to migrate data? So as I mentioned, if you're having like a arg1, the arg1 having are like reaching the maximum number of people, are like they're like trying to enhancing new features that is not possible in your old org. So now what we can do, you are going to purchase new org. So within this new org, you are going to uh, we are going to like implement the same functionalities like as in our Salesforce org1. But the thing here it is, in the case of like a new org, you need you need like create everything from scratch. It's empty. You need to create from scratch. So then what you can do, whatever the Salesforce org1, whatever the Salesforce org1 data, org1 metadata, first we need to pass it to the these org2. So once org2 is able to receive the data, then after you can start data migration. So the thing here it is, in these data migration, in these sorry metadata migration, so you can use, and majority of the people they are going to use and tool for like easy. And the next thing is it is basically free of cost. So because of that, majority of the people they are going to use and migration. So with the help of these and migration, they can deploy metadata from one org to the another org, one org to the another org. So here we are able to load all the Apex classes, Apex stickers, and then profiles, page layouts, so record types, roles, and then workflows, automation tools, everything you are able to migrate it. So once you are done with the metadata migration, then you can start loading off these data loading. So these data loading, as I mentioned, we are having like a data loader and then import a wizard. Is like a free of cost tools by default provided by Salesforce. If you would like to expensive, then we can go with talent and then other tools. So talent and then other tools. It's a purely depending upon your company budget. So if you like to go with if you like to go with free of cost, or if you like to go with the paid versions, so completely depending on you. So and next thing here it is, some people they would like to rely only Salesforce tools and they can't rely on third party tools. Okay, so in the case of data loader and then the import widget, those two are standard, standard features from Salesforce, so that everyone can trust that data loader and then import widget. But now we are facing an issue because of that. So we are trying to use a different tool. When you are trying to use a different tool, right? At the time we can go with we can go with different tool, but the policies and then the security that is matter. So in the case of talent, if they would like to, if you're trying to migrate with the talent, then if these talent may be utilizing our data, and then they may be they may be just simply send our details to the competitors, okay. So at the time our company may be in trouble. To avoid such kind of things, so some companies they may not allow, okay, so to use other tools. So you should use only data loader, and then so the other tool is basically import widget. If you would like to use any other tools apart from these two, as I mentioned, we need to go with the security and vulnerability issues, some people they will accept it, some people so they may not accept it. So we should verify before you are initiating migration. You should verify before initiating of your migration. So once it is migrated, then the data is accessible by talent, so that these people not interested. Okay, so it is, we need to keep in our mind. So why people are not going for other tools, in the sense we can go with other tools, but the thing here it is, if you go with other tools, right, then you need uh, give assurance to your company. So we these software is having a good security compliance, so that if we are having any issues, we can resolve it. Okay, we need to implement such kind of things. Okay, so now what we can do, I'm going to I'm going to so prepare these metadata migration. So these metadata migration. Okay, so if you go with metadata migration, as I mentioned, we can go with these tools. So we are done with this one, and we need to validate whether all the functionalities is working fine or not. For example, if you are like done with metadata migration, whatever the workflow, process builder, and email alerts, email templates, and the next one is what is this field updates, delete, and everything is working fine or not, you need to verify it. Okay, so it's like a very common projects. If you are like working with data migration, right? So you are going to like work for data migration only up to 1 year or like 6 months of time period. Okay, if you head for like data migration, you are going to like you are going to simply uh, simply work with 6 months or like 1 year only for metadata and then data migration. So it will take so much of time. Why it will take so much of time, I will explain. So the procedure you need to remember. So no need to do any new activities here. So if you're doing one activity, same activity we are going to perform multiple times. Same activity we are going to perform multiple times. So what we are going to do here, what we are going to do here. So in the case of metadata migration, so first of all, what we do, right? So we need to migrate sf arg1 sf arg1 sf arg1, so production to sfr2 developer sandbox. sfr2, so you can migrate to the sandbox. Okay, in the case of these migration is completed, then what you can do, you can go for like the next migration. So here in developer, so everything is working was expected. Then what you can do, you can deploy same changes to the partial copy sandbox. So here sf arg1 production to the sf arg1 like a production to sfr2 qa, that means partial copy. Okay, so then after what we need to do, so here once you are able to migrate to the sf r2 qa sandbox, then qa people, they are going to validate basic functionalities. So whether all your deployment is completed, and your arc should be previous. Okay, so how it is available in arg1, it's exactly replica to your arg R2 these QA sandbox. Okay, so whatever the functionalities, everything we have migrated, right? So that you should be work as expected. So once you are done with this one, and they are able to validate everything. So if everything is good, then they can provide the QA sign off. They can provide the QA sign off. So in the case of if this QA sign off is completed, then what we can do, so these sf arg1 production to the production to so sorry, production only, not production to the sf arg these SFR to UAT. Okay, and then if everything is good, then what we can do again, SF arg1 production to SF arg1 production to SF arg2 production. Okay, so like this data migration is going on. So metadata migration is going on. First SF arg1 production to the SF arg2. So arg2, these sandbox, lower sandbox, we can migrate it. So that means developer or developer pro here. Okay, so in the case of if everything is completed here, everything, the testing is completed here, and then you need to deploy to the, you need like deploy to the QA here. So in the case of like QA, right, same steps what we have implemented in SF arg1, same steps we are going to implement for these SF arg2. Okay, so whatever the like things is executing as expected in Salesforce arg1, same thing that should be executed in SF arg2 as well. Okay, so once I'm done, so next what we can do, so these SF arg1, so production to the, then we can migrate to the full copy sandbox. So within the full copy sandbox, so everyone will test, and then everyone will test. So like whatever the real time users, and then whatever the like people like who are not tested, so they are going to test the functionality. So if everything is good, then they can start deploying, then they can start deploying to the production. So like this, whenever you are like trying to deploy anything, first you need to complete the metadata migration. So within this metadata also, you need to follow these steps of pattern. These steps of pattern. First, we need to complete account ID, and then we need to complete like the corresponding production, from production to the like QA. So production to the like partial copy, production to the production. Like this, like this, we can, like this, we can migrate it. So if you see here, right, if you are like doing for like a one arc, say a production to the sandbox one, so then automatically remaining three you can do easily. Okay, so remaining three you can do easily. Why? Because whatever the issues you are going to face and whatever the challenges you are going to face, everything comes under at everything comes under at like uh, these issues and everything comes under, so these are two only. So whatever the issues are reported in these R2, right, we simply like keep it in note, and then we need to like resolve, take a backup copy of SF arg1 production, and then we need to resolve it. Okay, so if all these issues are fixed, then QA will give the sign off, and then we need to move to the production. So within these production within this UAT, again UAT people, they are going to test it. So like this multiple teams, they are going to validate our functionality. So we feel like we are just migrating the metadata, that's it. But in backend, these many things is there, so whenever you go for like a data migration, first the metadata migration completed, then only we can go for data migration. So these are the steps we need to follow for metadata, and then data as well. So and then data also, for data migration also, same steps we need to follow. So what we are going to do, from the production, we are going to take the some sample records from all the objects. We are going to take the some sample records, and then these records you can migrate from production one to the these Salesforce R2 sandbox. So if the record is creating successfully without any issues, then we are going to like load to the QA sandbox. So at the time of like a QA sandbox, the records volume maybe we can increase it. For example, in the case of like sandbox, what we are going to do, we are going to consider each sandbox cost uh, each object we are going to fetch 100 records or like 150 records, then you can deploy to the SFR2 sandbox. SFR2 sandbox. But in the case of but in the case of if you are deploying to the QA, then you are going to increase your object count number. For example, earlier what we are doing, we are taking like 100 for each object, and here what we are going to do, we are going to deploy at least 50% of records what we have available. For example, if 1 lakh records is available, then you need like migrate up to 50,000 for each batch. Okay, for each subject, each sorry object. So like that, you are going to migrate. So now in the case of these second third org. So if everything is good, if everything is good, then we can deploy it to the UAT. So in this UAT, whatever the data available exactly, we can deploy to the UAT. So whatever the data available in org1, we are exactly deployed to the UAT. Okay, and then so here real-time users testing. So if everything is completed, then we can deploy to the we can deploy to the production. Okay, so these are the steps we need to follow for data migration as well. So here you will get the multiple issues. What you need to do, you need to note down all the issues and then solution. Note down all the issues and then solution. So why I'm saying like this in sense, so if you are facing one issue, right? So same issue you are going to face in when we are deploying from SF-org1 to the these SF-org to SF-org to any one of the sandbox or like production. Okay, so whatever the issues you have reported, so those issues you can simply save it, and then if you're trying to migrate to the QA, UAT or production, they can simply migrate it. Okay, so that's why when you face an issue, rather than just ignoring and then fixing, we need to note it down. We need to note it down. Okay, so in the case of if the same issue is occurring in QA, same issue is occurring in UAT, same issue is occurring in full, we should be very careful. Because of that, we are going to use these data data issues in developer sandbox. Okay, so only thing here it is we need to remember the pattern and the steps what we need to follow. So if you're able to follow these pattern and the steps, right, you can easily work and easily finish these data migration project. Okay, so here we are following from here to here. Okay, Salesforce R1 to the Salesforce R2. So now the thing here it is if I'm migrating data migration here. So in the case of data migration, what we need to do, first of all, we need to identify the number of objects available in our org. Okay, number of objects available. One moment. Okay, so if you would like to migrate data, then first we need to identify number of objects in your arc. Number of objects in your arc, and then the next thing here it is we need to identify data volume. That means number of records. Okay, so number of records. So then after, so fields, number of fields. number of fields and categories. Okay, so in the sense we are having formula. So then after like a few fields are like a read only, and then we are having like a roll up summary. So then after we are having a relational fields. So we need to identify each and every field category here. So next thing here it is need to identify record type. Record type. Okay, is there any record type available within that object or not? So then after what we need to do, like independent object or dependent object. If dependent object, then what is their level? Okay, so these things we need to do. Okay, so these things we need to note it down. So now what we can do, so we are like a identify all these things. We need to like identify all these points. So if you are able to identify all these points, then what we can do, we can go for like these analysis. So number of objects, total how many objects records we need to migrate it. First of all, we need to check with them. So what are the objects data we need to migrate it? So if they need all object data, then we need to list down the object list what we need to migrate it. So then after, so data volume, each and every object how many records is there, and then so the fields, so formula fields we need to ignore it. So why? Because we cannot write anything in this formula field. And then few fields are read only, we need to ignore like read only fields, and roll up summary fields also we need to ignore it. Then the most important thing here it is we need to identify relational fields. We need to identify relational fields. Whatever the lookup and then mass rated fields, we need to consider these field values. So why we need to consider these field values in the sense? So with the help of this one, we need to perform multiple data loads. With the help of this one, we need to perform multiple data loads. Okay, it is like if number of relational fields is more, then you need like perform multiple activities. It is going to increase your complexity of data migration. If number of relation fields is less, then it is going to reduce your complexity. Or if number of relational fields is more, then it is going to increase the complexity. Okay, so then after identify record types. So we are having record types, right? If record type is available or not, we need to verify it. So if record type is also available, then we can go for the like whether it is a independent object or dependent object, or in the case of like if it is different, if it is dependent, then what is the level? So here we are having like this. So account is a parent, and then contact is a child. Within the contact, again opportunity is a child. So now first of all we need to identify first level objects. Okay, so these first level object is basically, so the object which is not having any parent, any parent here. Okay, so in the case of if you are having like a parent, then we can go with parent object in first level. So in the case of like account, so there is no parent in our account. Then what we can do, we are going to consider account is an independent object in the second level dependency. The second level dependency is basically we are having like a contact. So contact is already having dependency with our account. First we need to migrate account object data, then only we can go for like a contact object data. So that's why if it is having like a first level dependency, then we can go with the first level, and in the case of like a second level dependency, we go with the second level like this, and then third level. So what are the objects like from the third level? So we are going to maintain here. We are going to maintain this third level opportunity data here. Okay, so like this, whatever the records available, you need to simply segregate it. First level, second level, third level, or fourth level, fifth level, like that. So all the objects you need to segregate it. So if you are able to segregate, then what you need to first you need to start loading of first level object data migration. So then second level object data migration. So then third level object data migration. So like that you need to start migrating of level by level. Okay, but you cannot directly load account contact opportunity. What you need to first you need to complete first level objects. What all are first level objects? So the corresponding first level object data we need to migrate it. Then second level objects. Okay, so whatever the second level object records, all we need to migrate in this second level. So third level, so and then fourth level, fifth level, like that you need to segregate the records, and then you need to migrate the records. Okay, so this is the procedure. So if you're following this procedure, right, so the remaining steps is easy. Remaining steps is very easy, but we need to remember the procedure. If you're able to plan like this, so whatever the projects you are going to migrate, if you're planning like this, so then you won't face any issues. You will complete this data migration project smoothly. So otherwise what happened, right, as I mentioned, you will land up into many issues. Okay, so here what we can do, so first of all number of objects, data volume of each and every object records. So why we need to do, in the sense we need to verify, for example, in our account object 1000 records is there. After migration 1000 records is available in target org or not. So you are migrating SF-org1 to the SF-org2. So SF-org1 you are having 1000 accounts. After migration you need to verify whether 1000 records is available in R2 or not. You need to verify like that. Okay, so for the purpose you need to verify data volume, and then number of fields. So whatever the fields available in our object, ignore about formula, read only, roll up summary fields, and then you need to go with relation fields count. You need to go with relational field count, and then record type assignment as well. So in the case of record types, whatever the record type in arg1, so same record type you need to assign to the arg2 as well. And then independent object or dependent object, as I mentioned, so whatever the level of dependency, you need to prepare the list. So first level, second level, third level, like this, the level of dependency you need to prepare it. Okay, so once you are preparing all the steps, right, then you can do your data migration easily. And next thing here it is, the most important thing in this data migration is basically we need to identify checkpoint date. Okay, so what is the checkpoint date, in the sense, so for example, I am starting data migration from today onwards. Okay, so then first we are doing with Salesforce arg1 production to the, so sandbox, and then partial copy, full copy. So up to this one is fine. So now we are migrating from production SF-arg1 production 1 to the SF-arg2 production 2. SF-arg1 production 1 to the SF-arg2 production 2. So here the challenge here it is within this production one, these SF-arg1 production, right? So it's a keep on increasing the data. Why? Because so if you're using Flipkart application, right? So every day, every minute, you are increasing your orders. Okay, so every minute the order count is increasing. So similar way in this production also, every minute the records creation is it is happening in backend. Multiple people working on the arg1, right? So they are keep on creating the records. So if you're start migrating records now, the migration it may take 1 day or 2 days of time. 1 day or 2 days of time. So here, if you're migrating the data from production 1 to the production 2, then you need to give one checkpoint time. You need to give one checkpoint time. So until today morning, so until 30th 12 p.m. So unlike 12 a.m., whatever the records created, you can migrate the data. So you can migrate the data. You need to give the checkpoint until 12 a.m. of 31st June, 31st May. The records what it is available in arg1, you need to migrate the data. So then after what we can do, right? Whatever the pending data, after you are done with data migration, we are going to activate these SF2, and then we are going to disable SF1. We are going to disable SF1. So if you start migration, right? If you start migration, right? So at that moment, whatever the pending data available, the data we call as delta data, delta data. So that means from 31st 12 a.m. to the 31st 12 a.m. to the, so once this data migration completed, whatever the data available, so whatever the data migration start time, data migration start time, and so and then data migration complete time, completed time. So the difference between these two dates type, these two records, we are going to again remigrate. So here if you're remigrating the data, right, at this moment you may be having less data. Why? Because this period is maybe around 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days of time. So whatever the data created in between these 1 week of data, we called as delta data, we called as delta data. Okay, so if you're why we need do all these activities, in sense, if your production is inactive, so people they're keep on using production org, and they keep on creating the records. So if you consider today morning, if you consider today morning, the record is 1,000 records, and then in the case of 9 a.m. the record may be 1,010, and in the case of today evening, the records may be 1,020. So that's why what we need to, we need to take one checkpoint, we need to take one checkpoint. The checkpoint is basically today morning 12 a.m. So or maybe today morning 6 a.m. up to 6 a.m. whatever the records we have created, so those records we can migrate it. So those records we can migrate it. So then once we are done with the migration, so then after we will deploy to the, remaining org in our target org. Okay, so once these data migration completed, whatever the pending data that we call as delta data, that we are deploying to our target org. So it is a procedure we need to follow. So if you're following these key steps, right, then 90% of our data migration issues you may not face it. So remaining you can remaining challenges you can do it later, but it is the main procedure we need to follow for data migration. Okay, in our interviews or some places, if you are asking how we are doing data migration, or how you are planning for data migration, then just explain these steps. So first we are going to analyze a number of objects, data volume, and then relational fields. So then after record type identification, so then you write in levels of objects, first level, second level, third level, fourth level, like that. So segregating levels of objects. So once we are done with these steps, then after what we can do, from Salesforce outbound production to the, so these sandbox, and then again production to the QA, then again production to the UAT, again production to the product, these production. So generally in the case of this one, right, some people they are going to use UAT to the sandbox, UAT to the sandbox, again UAT to the sandbox, again UAT to the, to the UAT, and then finally production to production. So depending upon their strategy, they are going to follow either production to sandbox, or UAT to sandbox until UAT. So then finally production to production, they can follow any one of these procedures. Okay, so these steps we need to remember. If you're able to remember these steps, right, remaining we can do it. Okay, I will explain how to migrate the data. But first of all, we should aware of what is the data migration, and then what is metadata migration, and what are the steps we need to follow, so that we are able to load data smoothly. Is it clear for everyone? Anyone having any questions?
Close, Shrikant.
It's clear.
Shrikant, I had one concern. In checkpoint, you said now that if we migrate data from 6 to if 1,000 records are there, remaining records what we created in the backend, that for that record also we have to follow the same procedures, or
Yeah. So after your data migration complete, right, we are going to deactivate our arc. We are going to
okay, okay,
deactivate old arc. So old arc record creation, it is going to stop. Okay, and then we are going to activate this new arc. Okay, so if you're like activating these new arc, right, then new records creating like maybe sometime. So for example, today morning we have started data migration. Okay, so maybe like 6 a.m. 6 a.m. Until up to 6 a.m. 31st May we have started, and it may take up to like 2 days of time. Why? Because most of the times we are going to do it over weekend, so that's why Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Sunday 6 p.m. it was completed. 6 p.m. So 2nd July it was completed. So then what we are going to do? So we are going to like deactivate. We are going to deactivate these arg1, and then we are going to activate arg2. So mostly Saturday, Sunday, so they won't use arg1, arg1. So most of the records won't create it. But in chance, by chance, if they create any records, then those records we need to migrate. So 6 p.m. like of 2nd July, we are going to deactivate arg1 and we are going to activate arg2. They are doing some sanity testing and everything. If everything is works fine, then they are going to activate arg2. So if they are able to activate arg2, right? So then after from Monday onwards, so that means third, like 3rd June onwards, 3rd June onwards. So they are creating records in org2. They are creating records in org2. So here, if they are like creating records in R2, so at that moment, whatever the time period between these dates, like these time, so whatever the records created, we are going to apply conditions. We are going to apply condition here, conditional query. So with the help of that, you can fetch records created in between these two time period in this timestamp, so that you are able to get the very less records, whatever the records created. So then from 3rd June onwards, whatever the delta data created available here, right? So these data we can load it to the R2. Like that, we can do it.
yes, okay.
Any question from anyone?
Excuse me, sir. Sir, can you explain about sandbox?
Okay. So generally, we are at Salesforce. If you purchase Salesforce from the Salesforce org or Salesforce company, then Salesforce will give like one production arc, and then they are going to offer so sandboxes like developer sandbox, and then so developer pro sandbox. So then after partial copy sandbox, and then full copy sandbox. So what is this sandbox in the sense? Why we need to use this sandbox in the sense? So production is a live environment. So production is live environment. For example, you are using a Flipkart application. So whatever the development you are directly doing in a Flipkart server, so sometimes they are like keep on placing the orders, right? So customers keep on placing in orders. So at the same time, if you're like if you're like modifying some code, or like if you're like modifying some record data, then what happened? Customers may be impacted. Customers may be impacted. So maybe you are like doing one payment gateway functionality in a Flipkart application. So if you're like directly making changes in production, that means directly making changes in a live application. Live application sense customers using application. So then what happened? If you're like updating changes, then if everything is working fine, then fine. So if it is not working right, the amount is deducted, but your order not confirmed. So many customers will raise in a complaint. So amount data from my end, but order not at placed. So if we're like getting keep on issues, right, then the customers may like hesitate our details, and then they may be like reaching out to the some another website. Okay, so that's the reason. The reason every implementation, every live application, they're having like some backup applications, some backup maintenance. So these backup, right, whatever the implementation we need to do, first we need to complete in our developer sandbox. Okay, so if you would like to create fields, or if you would like to create validation rules, workflows, reports, and dashboards, everything first you need to complete in a developer sandbox. So once you are like done with your implementation, and if it is working as expected, so then you can start migrating. You can like start migrating from a developer sandbox to the partial copy sandbox. So these partial copy sandbox, some people called as a QA, some people called as a stage, some people called as a, depending upon their business, they are going to call different names. Okay, so these partial copy sandbox is having some space. This partial copy sandbox is having some space. For example, production, you are using like a 1000 GB, so 1000 GB. So then sandboxes, you are having like, you will get like up to 5 GB, up to 5 GB. In the case of like developer pro sandbox, it is having like up to 10 GB. Okay, and then in the case of like a partial copy sandbox, it is having up to 600 GB, and a full copy sandbox, it is having like a 1000 GB again. Okay, so these developer sandbox and then developer sandbox, we cannot create all the data available in our production. So for example, in production account object, you are having like around 10 lakhs records, but in the developer sandbox, you can create up to 1000 records or like 2000 records only. Okay, you cannot create more records in these developer sandbox or developer sandbox. Okay, so in these developer sandbox, you just need to implement your activities, and you need to complete your unit testing whether it is working or not. If everything is working fine, then you can deploy it to the partial copy sandbox. Then you can deploy to the partial copy sandbox. So within this partial copy sandbox, you are having some data, you are having some real-time data. Then you can test with a large number of records. You can test with a large number of records. So whoever like doing QA, so that means some people like working as a testers, right? So they are going to test in these QA sandbox. So if it is working fine without any issues, they are going to give the QA sign off. So if QA sign off is completed, then we need to deploy to the full copy sandbox. So these full copy sandbox is exactly same to our production. This full copy sandbox is exactly same to our production. So whatever the data available in production, similar data available in our full copy sandbox. Some people called as a UAT. UAT in the sense user acceptance test. UAT in the sense user acceptance test. So whatever the data available in production, same data available in our full copy. So here real-time users, they are going to verify these functionalities, whatever you have implemented. And then if everything is good, they are going to do the QA sign off. And then finally over weekend or like midnight, we can like disable our live application. We can do the maintenance page. Then we can upload these changes to the production. So once we deploy our changes, then we can validate one time. So if everything is work, then we can disable a maintenance page. We can disable maintenance page. So directly we cannot make changes in production. Why? Because our customers may be impacted with our changes. So because of that, we need to perform these many activities. Okay, so these developer sandboxes, they are going to like you are depending upon your edition. So it may be like you can get like a multiple, like 50 to 60 you will get it. Okay, 50 sandboxes you will get it. And then partial copy sandbox you will get only one. And then full copy sandbox also by default you will get only one. If you need more, you need to pay extra to Salesforce. Then only they are going to enable partial copy and then full copy. By default they are going to offer you one partial copy and then one full copy. So if you'd like to, if you need more, then you will get like a you need to pay more amount to Salesforce. Then they are going to enable these partial copy or full copy sandbox. So these developer sandbox and developer sandbox, you can create like up to 50 to 60 like this, depending upon your edition. And again, edition to edition, these numbers is vary. Developer and then developer pro. But partial copy, full copy sandbox is same. If you go for any edition, by default they are offering only one partial copy and then one full copy. If you need more, then you need to ask them to Salesforce just enable few more. Then they are going to they're going to like enable multiple things. Okay.
Okay,
So
sir.
to remember. Yeah. Any more question from anyone?
Shrikant, this 5 GB, 10 GB, this is a storage limit or what?
Yes, storage limit.
Um, but I heard that for developer it's 200 MB and
No,
Pro
I'm like
1 GB.
I'm just giving like a example purpose.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm saying, like this production, if it is a 1000 GB, so developer sandbox, pro sandbox, partial copy, they're having sizes like this. Just to give an example, just for an example, it's not an actual. So depending upon edition, it is vary again.
Okay.
Any more question from anyone?
No, Shrikant.
Is everything is good?
Yes.
Okay. So go for your lunch, and then we'll meet at 2 p.m.
Okay.
Okay.